Hi, welcome to another Insider Notebook here at Bleacher Report. James Palmer with you. We've been hanging out every single day, haven't we? You've been in that chat every day. It's been on fire. I love all the questions you guys are bringing. Just a reminder, if this is your first time with us, I will answer these chats, as many as I can, in between each and every one of these topics that we are going to go through. Let's get to those topics, and we're going to get to some major news that happened right before this show. But we're going to start with the latest kind of deadline rumors that are going around the league right now. We're going to go with no, the major news. It's up at the top. I didn't know if we'd have it ready or not. But yes, the Dolphins move with Chris Greer. We're going to start with that. How does that impact some of the moves that they could potentially be making before Tuesday? Then we'll get to some other moves that could potentially are kind of the bigger rumors right now. Some things have shifted a little bit, and I expect them to shift a little bit after Sunday's games as well in terms of asking price. I'll get to that. Landing spot for some top stars. Is that where they're at or where they're headed? Who's likely staying put? I think we have a couple of names there that I think are most likely going to stay put. And then quiet ahead of the deadline, I'll tell you why. And is that going to stick or is it going to change? Don't forget, jump in that chat. We'll start with the Dolphins. Massive news from Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, prior to this show. He ends up parting ways, mutually parting ways, it states in a statement, that the Dolphins and general manager Chris Greer have decided to mutually separate. The odd part about this, obviously, is where their season stands. Ended up losing last night to the Ravens and really just didn't put much of an effort out there on the field. And now, as a team that is really looking to rebuild, they were in a soft rebuild heading into this season. Now they're looking to kind of maybe fully rebuild. Who's part of the future? Who's not part of the future? They definitely are sellers in some capacity, but now you're doing all of that without your general manager. Who's in charge of the vision moving forward for 2026? This is an interesting move for the Miami Dolphins, but they decided to do this. They want to make sure that they start turning the page quickly. A big part of this is reportedly that Mike McDaniel will be with the Dolphins for the remainder of the season. We'll see what ends up happening in the offseason, what ends up happening moving forward with Mike in 2026. There's still plenty of people around this league and in that building, I will tell you, that think Mike McDaniel is a very good football coach, but this team was not very well put together apparently, and the product on the field hasn't been very good. So it appears that a little bit of that blame, because nothing is mutual, guys. Nothing is fully mutual, isn't, unless you're Jerry Seinfeld. And now they're looking to shift gears. It's going to be Champ Kelly, the interim general manager. He's been through this before. He did this with the Raiders as well, to my understanding, right? A couple years ago, he did this. And so now he's going to be the one, maybe more or less, fielding the calls on a couple of different players. Now, I wanted to get into that because that gets us into where things are moving right now. Their edge rushers are definitely ones that are in play. And over the last couple of days, talking to people around the league, it's been essentially this. There's going to be one of these guys most likely on the move. They kind of have three, whether it's Bradley Chubb or Jalen Phillips or Matthew Judon, which maybe cost less than the first two, but they could potentially be moving on from one of these guys as they look about the future of 2026 and what they can do. With Bradley Chubb, remember, he's had the ACL a season ago. He's turning 30. He also has 2 years guaranteed left on his contract. Well, I don't know if it's guaranteed, but 2 years on his contract. I don't think it's guaranteed, actually. I think I misspoke. I think some sort of restructuring might have to happen with his contract if you're going to go and acquire Bradley Chubb. I also think Jalen Phillips might be the one that some teams are interested in. Obviously younger, obviously is playing on that fifth-year option. I think he would maybe take like a third rounder to get that deal done. Is that something that, teams are looking for? We'll see. I think prices can change, but I think that might be something that puts it in there. Matthew Judon might be one that would cost less and maybe help and have the opportunity to contribute in some rotations or some snaps in certainly a contender. We'll get to Jalen Waddle in a second, a little bit later in the show, but let's see what happens. I just saw this right here in the chat. Gun to your head, do the Broncos make a trade for a pass catcher? Well, let's get to the Denver Broncos because they're in part of my latest deadline rumors. I think Denver's game against the Texans is massive. I think it's a massive barometer for where this team thinks they are offensively. We know how talented they are on the defensive side of the ball, but I think Sean Payton, one of the best offensive minds in this league, best offensive minds the last 20 years, has a very good understanding of where this offense is. And they know that they played very well for 4 quarters, which they haven't really done for most of this season, against a Cowboys defense that is arguably the worst in football. Now you're playing the other team in Texas, and it's the best defense in all of football. I think this game on Sunday will give a very realistic look for George Paton, the general manager, and Sean Payton, the head coach, about where they stand as an offense. Sean has been very comfortable with the rotation opposite of Cortland Sutton at that number 2 spot, whether it's Troy Franklin, whether it's the speedster Marvin Mims, who's an all-pro returner but in the concussion protocol, whether it's Pat Bryant, their young, physical, bigger receiver out of Illinois. And so that's been kind of a revolving door opposite of Cortland. I don't think they hated that idea, and they like the growth of their young guys. And I think they're still looking at a tight end. They get Mercedes Lewis, who's a big physical guy. He's 41 years old, though. Evan Ingram has been a slow burn. I've talked to Evan a little bit, and I think it's starting to come around in what they want to do with him at the tight end spot. Could they make a move, potentially maybe at guard for offensive line depth after this game? Could they make a move for potentially a pass catcher? There's some receivers out there, but the price is going up a little bit. I'll tell you why in a second. And could it possibly be maybe that wide tight end that can block and catch the football? I think the game Sunday night is massive for the Denver Broncos and how they're evaluating how aggressive they want to be ahead of 4 o'clock on Tuesday. With the Browns, I do think they're listening. They understand the rebuild they're in. They understand that they have this young core of players that are rookies that are playing very, very well. I think the one player I wanted to focus on here, I think if David Njoku is called upon by other teams, I think the Browns are going to want to do right by him. Obviously, Fannin, the rookie, has played really, really well in catching the football and is part of that future. I think they would move Njoku for the right price into the right spot, and I think he's been great for that organization. I think they'd like to do him right. With the Bears suffering some injuries at the pass rusher spot, would they try to go out and get somebody to maybe help them in terms of depth? I'm not saying making a huge splash, but Ryan Poles is an aggressive general manager, and this is a defense that now is a little bit thin on the outside with a couple of guys banged up. Shamir Turner ends up tearing the ACL. Dominique Robinson has the high ankle sprain. Could they get a depth piece at the edge? I'd keep an eye there. And then the Patriots are a fascinating one, and this is one I really, really wanted to talk to you guys about. Unload the Raiders. Here we go. We'll get to all this. Myles Garrett's at Dallas. We'll get to Myles Garrett in a second as well. The Patriots have almost $49 million in cap space. Number one in the NFL. What did Mike Vrabel do? He made 2 moves in the last couple of days, got himself a couple of 6th-round picks back for White and Duggar, and now you look at where it's at, and this is my good old fellow Buckeye Albert Breer's list. They have a lot of cap space, and so there's some people that think that this rebuild has happened a lot quicker than people think. They're first place in the AFC East. They're certainly a playoff team. Their quarterback in his 2nd season, now paired with Josh McDaniels, is playing like an MVP candidate. This is something, to my understanding, in the building that's not a big surprise. Maybe the Drake May growth this fast is a little bit of a surprise, but the way that they've played, the vibes in the building, everybody held accountable. I've talked to people there. It's been a really, really good feeling behind the scenes. Could Mike Vrabel and company be a little bit more aggressive in where exactly they go? They could look for running back depth, by my understanding. They could also be looking for a pass rusher. Could they make a big splash? I think they want whoever they bring in to also help them in 2026 and possibly beyond, but they have the money to do it. They have the vibes behind the scenes right now. I know they're looking at running backs. I know they're looking at pass rushers. Do they pull the trigger? We'll see. It could be a pass rusher depth. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they added to their pass rushing group. Could it be a splash? We'll see. Could it be a rotational guy? Maybe more likely. But I do think the perception that we have of the Patriots is that they're starting to look a little bit more aggressively because of where they're at. But they do understand how they want to build this. They don't want to give up a ton of capital unless it's somebody that's going to be there for multiple years. So we'll see how they play this. But I think it's been very, very fascinating. The Giants, really quickly, before I move on to the next one, I think their thinking has changed dramatically after these last 2 weeks and the Cam Scadaboo injury. I think they were looking at receivers. I think they were looking for somebody to be a complement to Malik Nabers in 2026 and be maybe as somebody that can help Jackson Dart out right now in 2025. His development is everything to them. Do they go out there, though, and mortgage some of the future by getting one of these receivers? That might be difficult, and I'm going to tell you why. Let's get back to this chat a little bit. Any Texans buzz? I would think that they're looking at running back and offensive line. Obviously, the defensive side of the ball is pretty good, and they could be sellers maybe for somebody like Christian Harris if somebody comes calling looking for an athletic linebacker. I don't think the running back room has been exactly what they want. I think they're going to see on Sunday when they face a team that's just on an insane pace in terms of sacks with the Denver Broncos. I think they have 36 right now, which is a bonkers number. And I think they're going to see their offensive line go, all right, maybe we need guard help. Maybe we need, this has been a patchwork group. Could they maybe go get one of those veterans from the Browns? Could they go get maybe Evan Neal from the Giants, who's been a healthy scratch? I think those are some things that they could be looking at. Any chance Philly Lance Ward? I think it's Denzel Ward you're talking about. I think there's a few teams that are looking at corners right now. I'm not sure Denzel Ward fully available or how that would work or what the asking price would be. I think some teams that have a player like Denzel Ward and Andrew Berry knows it, that he can jack the price right now. We'll see what happens moving forward. Philly pretenders aren't Super Bowl contenders, buddy. Oh, it was at somebody, not at me. Shador never play a snap for the Browns. We'll see about that. Myles Garrett to Philly. Let's get to Myles real quick. I wanted to say that I don't think Myles Garrett's going anywhere. I think it's very interesting that obviously he was very disgruntled and making the rounds at Radio Row. I saw him there and talking to everybody about how he wants to play elsewhere. Then he gets the $40 million a year contract and he's happy and he's fine. He has 5 sacks. Obviously, he's upset with the way things are going as an organization, but he's playing outstanding. It would be $61 million in dead money for the Cleveland Browns if they move Myles Garrett. That's just it's an insane number that you'd have to put up with. Even if you're given 3 first-round picks by, say, Philadelphia, if Howie wants to go crazy, it's $61 million in dead money. It'd be really interesting if something like that were to be pulled off. It just doesn't seem likely. It doesn't seem like he's on the move. We'll see, obviously, if something goes bonkers, but I don't see that happening. $61 million is an insane number. What about the Colts? Do they make a move? I think they are certainly looking in the secondary right now. That's the problem. There's a couple teams looking in the secondary, and there's not a lot of corners out there, which is why you could look at the Rams jumping and making a move, the Eagles jumping and making a move, as being very, very smart prior to this deadline. And Michael Carter goes to Philadelphia, McCreary goes to the Rams, and maybe they realized that the market wasn't that great and jumped at making a move to help their secondary. We'll see what happens, but I know there's other teams looking, certainly. Jacoby going to the Steelers. I'm going to tell you about Jacoby in just a second. Kirk Cousins for Myles Garrett, lock it in. I don't think Kirk is going anywhere. We'll talk about him in a moment as well. Vikings will be buyers after this upset win over the Lions. They've already spent so much money, and they've already put this team together in a fashion. Now, what's happened is they're banking on J.J. McCarthy. We'll see what ends up happening there, but they've really put all their eggs in one basket with this rookie quarterback or second-year quarterback that hasn't really played at all, and they spent a ton of money in the trenches that haven't played up to the standard of what the dollars they had. I don't really see them being really fully buyers. Can't trade something that nobody wants. Cut to immediately, if not sooner. He's still guaranteed $54 million next year. Tua Tagovailoa is still guaranteed $54 million in 2026. Sadly, he can't go anywhere. Colts going deep into the playoffs. It looks that way, and the defense, Blue Anarimmo, would like it to get a little bit better as well. 49ers training for a DN. We'll get to that too. Latest landing spots for top stars. Let's get to this because some of you guys are asking about these receivers. A lot of stars don't get moved. I know Christian McCaffrey was one of them. Devontae Adams, he's in the back end of his career this past year. He was moved. A lot of stars don't get moved. There's not that many of them, and you like to hang on to your good players. But I think that's why I wanted to bring these 2 players up in this group and get to Trey Hendrickson. But first, 2 receivers. Rashid Shaheed with the Saints is kind of the name that keeps coming up because Chris Olave, in terms of his availability, seems to be fading as I ask around, and it is much more likely that he stays with the Saints. Shaheed's going into, this is the last year of his deal. He's going to be a free agent this offseason. Certainly teams like the Steelers or the Bills, or some people say the Broncos. I haven't heard that from Denver, but some teams definitely interested in maybe acquiring his speed. He brings much more than that, but he's a very good receiver. What the issue is, I think, is the asking price. And I think that's because Mickey Loomis understands the market right now. And right now, the asking price is probably like a day 2 pick. And that makes sense. Amari Cooper went for a 3 last year. So I could see it being a day 2 pick right now. I could see after Sunday, do teams keep calling and the asking price changes. Oftentimes that happens when it gets closer to the deadline. The teams that are selling sometimes lower their prices because they know they need to sell, but it's just business to right now on a Friday or a Thursday yesterday to say it's a day 2 pick that I'm going to need for Shaheed. We'll see if that goes down. It's kind of been the same thing with Jacoby Myers a little bit. A lot of people expect him to be on the move. He's a free agent after this year. Or do the Raiders, if you look at the thinking of Pete Carroll, have him play for the rest of the season as they're a little thin at wide receiver, and then just take the comp pick as they build this thing more forward when he goes somewhere else in size as free agent? Could the comp pick just be equally as valuable as the trade halfway through the season? Then why do you do it? I think it's interesting what's happening with the receiver spot a little bit. Again, this can change and can certainly change after the games on Sunday. We'll get into these chats a little bit more once I do. Jacoby Myers just answered it. I mean, Deshaun Watson, he's still there. It's almost over there. Crosby moving. He is not moving anywhere. I don't think Crosby moves ever unless he tells the Raiders he would like to be moved. Any Commanders, buyers, sellers, or neither at this stage. It's looking rough for them. It certainly is. I wouldn't be surprised if they were a seller with a player or two that they might think could help us get some of our picks back. I don't think they're going to be buyers per se with where they're at right now. Trey Hendrickson, landing spots for top stars. I think there are teams that are still interested. I think Philly could still be interested in him. I think the Niners could still be interested in him. Yes, the Bengals have said we are not moving Trey Hendrickson. I've gotten no sense that he's on the move by any sense, but I wanted to say this. I wanted to say where they're at financially, and I wanted to say where they're going to be after this weekend. So I asked Copilot to show us the top 5 Bengals players and how much salary cap each of them take up in 2025. And here's what we found. Trey Hendrickson's 9% of their salary cap. T. Higgins is 8.62. Jamar Chase, 8.44. Orlando Brown at 5.38, and Logan Wilson at 8.76. Logan Wilson could certainly be on the move. He's lost his job. I think there's some teams that wouldn't mind snagging him. That wouldn't be an issue. With Trey Hendrickson, I'm just fascinated if after this game, now Joe Flacco has said he's feeling pretty good, but he has the AC joint sprain in his throwing shoulder. He is 40. If this is an issue with the shoulder and it gets re-injured on Sunday and they know it's Jake Browning for the rest of the way out until they get Joe Burrow back, would they be more inclined to trade Trey Hendrickson? I know it's something that Duke Tobin does not do. They don't like to do it. They never do it, but they've been at ends before. And it was not pleasant this offseason. And he's not signed past this year. Could something change after Sunday, before Tuesday? We'll see. I'm not saying it will. I've got no indication that it will. But I just wanted to mention where it stands. And maybe, who knows? He never makes moves. Chris Ballard with the Colts. It's been 8 years. He's made one move at the deadline. That was Naheem Hines when he asked for a trade. Maybe Lou Anarumo is knocking on the door asking for his old player back. I think that would be a massive splash, and I think that'd be pretty rad. Before we get to names, who's likely staying put, I want to get to some of these chats. If Chiefs get Pennell, do they pursue Breece Hall? I'll get to Breece Hall certainly because I think I have an update there. Jacksonville moves after Hunter injury. I think still defensive front is something they could do. I don't think they're overly as aggressive as they were maybe 2 weeks ago, but we'll see. Bears buying any D-line, covered that already. Certainly looking for some depth on the edge, I would say specifically. What's next move for the Eagles? Still looking at pass rushers for sure. I wouldn't put a splash past Howie at all. I think he's still looking to see what else he can do. From the calls that I made, the Michael Carter trade and the Brandon Graham coming back out of retirement has not changed their thinking about going after pass rushers and cornerbacks. I think they want this team, in the window they're in, to still go after a Super Bowl and go back to back. What else we got? See, I'm right. Old man Joe. I don't know what that means. Old man Jojo. What running backs are on the move? I think there's plenty of depth guys, and I think there's some teams that are looking for sure. I mentioned the Patriots. I mentioned the Texans. I think the Chargers still could be kicking that around, even though Vidal's done a decent job in what he's been able to do filling in for Amari Hampton until he comes back. But I think somebody like Jerome Ford could be specifically on the move. I think Jaleel McLaughlin with the Broncos has just been a healthy scratch as he's kind of lost his job, and he could bring some juice. These guys are maybe just pieces, part of a rotation that you could maybe move. Names most likely staying put. Let me just say real quick. Looks like Kirk Cousins is most likely staying put. A.J. Brown looks like he's most likely staying put. I just don't see where they're at right now and where Philly is, that moving A.J. Brown in the middle of the season increases their chances to win the Super Bowl. It just doesn't seem that way right now. There's a lot going on there, obviously. Read Brooks Cabina's article on The Athletic about A.J. Brown, a great profile of him as a person and a player. Jalen Waddle, it doesn't seem, with everything that's going on in Miami, and I know some teams, I was on the radio this morning in Denver, they were asking, could Jalen Waddle be available? Teams, to my understanding, have been told pretty much just no when they call about Waddle. I think he's part of that core in the future. He doesn't cost a ton, honestly, with his contract in terms of 2026. So I think they want to hang on to him and make him a part of what they're doing moving forward with the Jets. And I think there's a lot of questions in here with the Jets. Don't even get me started on the Cardinals. Could A.J. Dillon be on the move? That could be one of them. Hey, James, did I miss any trade stuff with the Bears? Yes, you did. I think they're going to look for depth on the defensive line, specifically at the edge. Don't look for them to get like somebody to really rock the boat or be completely insane type of move. Ryan Poles can be aggressive, but with the injuries there, keep an eye on them getting depth and trying to get maybe one of these lower, maybe it's an Arden Key or maybe it's a Judon or something. I don't know. But I think they're going to look for depth. With the Jets, let's get to this. It's been very fascinating because there's been a lot of reports out there that they've met with Jermaine Johnson and they're not going to move him. He's a part of what they want to do in the future. I think that's probably true. I do think there's a price still. And if it's a second rounder and somebody's willing to do that for this edge rusher, I think the Jets are going to most likely do it. We'll see if somebody gets up there in that offer. I don't think they want to move him entirely, but if that's the type of offer it is, I think they would. I don't think they're looking to move Will McDonald. I think that's more likely to stay and more of a firm, we're really not going to do that compared to Jermaine Johnson. And yes, we want him to be part of our future, but what's your offer? If it's a second rounder, I think that changes things a little bit. With Breece Hall, and that's up in the chat quite a bit, is Crosby on the move? Nope. With Breece Hall, essentially this. He's kind of the focal point of this offense still. They want to be a running offense. They know how good he is. We saw what happened in their last game, even though they're on a bye now. 136 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he threw one, I believe. I think we all thought this offseason, as there's not been any contract negotiations moving forward with him, that there was most likely going to be, they're not winning games, they're going to move him before the deadline. Well, I think that's kind of changed a little bit. I think it'll take a day 2 pick. And I think they'd listen for that. I think it swung back to maybe we want him. And I think there's people in the building that are like, I think we would like to keep him. But if they get a day 2 pick, if they get a third rounder for him, if they get something like that, it might be more of a conversation for sure. And I think they would have been a little bit different, maybe like 4th, 5th rounder in the summer. That was maybe what we thought. I think the price is higher, which makes me believe when I hear that there's some people in the building that want to keep him around. It's still up in the air on Breece. We'll see what the offer is. Quinnen Williams still looks like he's staying there. That's likely to stay put right there. And Chuba Hubbard, to my understanding, is going to stay there in Carolina. Let's get to some of these. Is Kamara on the move? Nope. He made it clear he will retire if he gets moved. Any Giants wide receiver moves? I think we talked about that. I think it's changed a little bit. Steelers looking at receivers. I think they are, but I think the mood has shifted a little bit. Like, can Wilson go out there and play again really, really well? We know we like Calvin Austin. Maybe these guys can piece together this situation opposite of DK. We're seeing an emergence in our tight ends. Maybe it's more of a task of us right now to go look at the defensive side of the ball that is just not performing up to their salaries, not performing up to what we were expecting usually to see with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last year, the second half of the year, they didn't play very well as a defense. There was a couple of weeks this year where we were like, oh, they're getting better, and they haven't been playing well. Maybe they're thinking shifts a little bit, but they still have been thinking about a receiver for sure. Mortgage the farm for Miles. You'd be mortgaging more than the farm. James Tariq Woolen. That's Tariq Woolen to the Colts. I have a friend of a source there. There's apparently smoke around his name coming to Indy. I'll say this. Indy is looking at corners. Obviously, he is kind of at ends and kind of where the situation is in Seattle, so it's not a stretch to see Tariq Woolen possibly on the move. I'd like to see Chris Ballard aggressive. I think there's other people in that building that would like to see Chris Ballard aggressive. Like I mentioned earlier, in all his time in Indianapolis, he's made one trade before the deadline and at the deadline. And it was Raheem Hines when he demanded a trade, essentially. Let's see if the situation they're in at 7-1, the best record in football, that they either go out and get somebody to help them up front or somebody to help them in the secondary. Remember, I was Indy playing. They're playing Pittsburgh, I believe. If Aaron Rodgers goes lights them up, maybe that pushes the button a little bit on helping out in that secondary. Kayvon Thibodeau updates. He's not going anywhere. He certainly is. That was kind of confirmed to me again this past evening. Any Falcons moves? I could see them parting with an edge rusher. Possibly. These young kids are playing really, really well. There was some talk about maybe a receiver or something after Ray McLeod was gone. They just need Darnell Mooney to get healthy, to my understanding. That's what they'd like, and they'll be fine there on offense and where they stand. Please tell me, my fellow Bears fans, that DJ Moore will not be going anywhere. I actually haven't heard anything about DJ. I think it would be a pretty high asking price, and we'll see. You all laugh now at my source, but just wait, you hooligans. Hey, it'd be killer if you got the source. It'd be killer if the deal happened. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to say, what is it? Is it Adikin? Okay, 752. We're going to give you some love if this ends up happening. Is Howie done? I don't think Howie is done. I don't. I really don't think he's done. By the way, throw in there your favorite Halloween costume. I'd like to read those. Deal quiet ahead of the deadline. Right now, it's quiet. And most people I've talked to believe that this is going to be maybe a quieter quieter trade year. We've had them kind of go up each of the last couple of years, but also stay relatively kind of the same. But they've kind of increased a little bit in that time period right before the deadline. So I think what we need to wait is, and I talked about this and I was saving this to the end. Did you see a couple of times during this I said, the price is this now, maybe it's a second rounder now, it's a third rounder now. That's what they're being told, these teams. Are those prices going to stay the same after the games on Sunday when some of these teams lose that are looking to sell? I think that prices oftentimes change in the NFL come Sunday night, come throughout the day Monday, and throughout the day Tuesday before the 4 o'clock deadline. So right now, yes, quiet. I think the asking prices probably are where the sellers want them to be. Does that price change after the outcome of some of these games on Sunday? I think that's when things start to change a little bit. All right, before we go, let's keep an eye on what you guys have in the chat, and we'll go on here. Today, the Dolphins parted ways with Greer. Yep, that's a big move to make, parting ways with your general manager just 4 days ahead of the trade deadline. I find that fascinating. Ravens pass rush. I think the Ravens are buyers. And I don't think it's specifically on pass rush. I think if they can get the best type of upgrade, whether it's a defensive tackle or somebody in the pass rush type of spot, I think the Ravens could find themselves there. I think the Ravens still feel like they can win that division. And you know what? I think they very well can. Who would be the biggest name that gets moved? I think there's always not always, but there's always somebody that is relatively close to getting moved, and once in a while they do, like the McCaffrey move a handful of years ago. Devontae Adams last year, I guess, is a really, really big name. We'll see if somebody gets moved. There's definitely teams calling on Trey Hendrickson. There's definitely teams calling on, the team's already called on Max Crosby to see what happens. A lot of these are rebuffed. I don't think Max is going anywhere, by the way. All right, Chiefs. We'll answer a couple more of these before we get out of here. The Chiefs are, with the Isaiah Pacheco injury, I think back in. It's like before I was telling you, you know what? I think they've kind of liked their backfield. Kareem Hunt's done a pretty good job getting in. The Smith kid's played pretty well. Pacheco seems to have his feet back, and now he's got the knee injury. It's like they're back in on the running back depth side of things a little bit. That is, again, a massive game on Sunday. I think if James Cook runs all over the place on this Chiefs defense, and they're going to go, we need some help on the defensive tackle spot. We need some help on that defensive line to kind of solidify this group a little bit, because we know how good our offense is. And maybe Brett Veach, who has had a history of being, aggressive, decides to go out there and make a move. I also think in the adverse side of things, if the Bills just can't move the football at all, I think they're going to be more aggressive towards a boundary wide receiver. I think Steve Smith and I on our show made a couple of headlines about Keon Coleman. That came out in the last couple of days. I think Keon responded to them as well. But hey, if Brandon Beane sees what's on the field and they can't move the football, then maybe they do get more aggressive towards a wide receiver. So I think that game is very important, like a lot of these other ones, for the Chiefs, as I mentioned, of where it's at, and then exactly for the Bills as well. Geno Smith, I don't. Nobody's trading for Geno Smith, I don't think. Get rid of everyone besides Max. Max is the best, man. He just really is. He's one of those guys you root to get some wins in his NFL career. Anywho, for the Colts, I'd like to honestly snag Jalen Phillips and Rick Woolen. Ooh, or a different edge. I think Phillips is going to be like a day 2 pick, certainly. I think it's a high asking price. What did I say earlier? Because I had it written down here, and there's just too many things on here that I have. Yeah, like a third rounder at least is what they're looking at. So that's where things kind of stand with Jaden Phillips if you're kind of interested in acquiring him. Thoughts on a Pollard trade? I don't know if they're really trying to move anybody on that side of the ball, because they'd like Cam Ward to continue to grow and somewhat kind of develop in the chaotic situation that is his first season in the NFL. So we'll see if something happens, but we'll it's more likely on the defensive side of the ball. Certainly maybe like a Draymond Jones could possibly be on the move. Lions pass rush help. They are looking at pass rushers. They're looking at somebody to rush the passer opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, make his life a little bit better, get a little more depth up front, I think is an important thing that they'd like to have, so they don't go through what they went through in the postseason a season ago. I think that's what they really want to avoid. I think they are looking at that. I mentioned Jacoby Myers. I think the Raiders' thinking right now is, yes, I think we'll listen to some things that are going on, but what if we just kept him the whole year? We're kind of thin at receiver, and we just take the comp pick after he walks in free agency. That could potentially be something there. Where's your costume, James? I actually wore a costume yesterday on my show on The Athletic with Jake Seeley, who does fantasy for The Athletic. He was Darkwing Duck, and I was a Power Ranger. But I'm going to be Sean Connery's dad. Not Sean Connery's dad. Indiana Jones's dad, Sean Connery, and my son is going to be Indiana Jones. That's going to be us tonight when we trick or treat. I'm going to have the beard. I'm going to be, Junior. Total Sean Connery as Dr. Jones from the Indiana Jones. So hope you all had a Charger still in running back market. I said yes. I think to some extent, maybe it's more depth, but we'll see. And I do know they love picks, so I don't know if they're going to overly reach right now. We have a show on Sunday morning. Don't forget that 11:30 Eastern, we're going to do this. And then we're also going to have one on Monday. And then again, I will be with you guys all day on Tuesday, working the phones, figuring out everything that's going on. And yeah, I'm going to bounce. I'm going to get my beard on for Sean Connery in the costume. You all enjoy your Halloween. Hope you get all the trick-or-treats that you'd like. And I'll see you all Sunday morning. Take it easy.